Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled parent stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Good dog defends her home from the evil forces of a Halloween entitled Mom. After that, entitled Mom rampages, ruins our evening, and gets me and my family thrown off of a train. After that, customer harasses me, low-key stalks me, and is in general the worst. After that, guy steals $400 of gas, but I get the last laugh. And after that, don't litter folks, you might find yourself at the receiving end of my devious father. Now Karen told me if this video gets 1,000 likes, she won't mess with anybody's dog for a whole week. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. And huge thank you to Carol, our newest supporter on Patreon. Good dog defends her home from the evil forces of a Halloween entitled Mom. This story is, thankfully, not quite as extreme as some others here, but I got wind of it recently and felt I just had to share it, so here goes. I'll preface by saying that I was, sadly, not actually present for any of this, but it was just relayed to me by my little sister. So dialogue is obviously going to be inferred and paraphrased, but the basic gist is the same. Halloween this year was frigid at home, so my family didn't see a whole lot of trick-or-treaters. But for the few kids who were willing to brave the icy night, there was great reward awaiting them at my family home. My parents always buy a lot of candy, and since there were fewer kids this year, that meant the portion sizes ended up being greater for those who did show up. Alongside the extra candy though, there was another great surprise for kids who came to the door. Ted's. For those who don't know, so probably everyone, Ted's is my squishy-faced, 100-plus pound Mastiff puppy who is still growing and still seemingly unaware that she can't fit into anyone's lap anymore. My other dog, Clover, was upstairs with Wendy, one of my little sisters, as she's a sweet girl but tends to lose her mind whenever anybody knocks on the door. Wendy's twin sister, Erin, however, who loves doing special effect makeup, had put on some pretty cool gore effects and stayed down to answer the door. So any kids who came up got a good look at both Erin, with a face full of fake staples and stitches, and Ted's, with a face full of cute. With that scene set, let's get to what actually happened. About an hour or so into the night, only a handful of kids have shown up, and Erin has decided, screw it, I'm going for it, and has begun handing out massive fistfuls of candy to the kids. Obviously, this makes her pretty popular, even if some kids were initially freaked out by the whole zombie girl with a massive dog thing going on. A knock comes at the door. Erin answers it. On the other side of the door stands a little boy with chubby cheeks and messy hair, wearing a Spider-Man suit sans mask that was apparently a bit hard to see under the gigantic winter coat he had over it. He's shivering, but still smiling as he holds out a plastic pumpkin bucket and says trick or treat. Erin estimated him to be around the upper end of toddlerhood and was absolutely delighted by him. She adores kids, when they're not being brats, and she's a huge fan of Spider-Man, so she was instantly rather fond of this kid. The kid, who we'll just call Danny, cause why not, looked a bit startled by her face at first, but she quickly explained it was just makeup, to which he perked back up and seemed really excited, further cementing Erin's love for this kid. Suddenly, as she's busy heaping candy into this kid's bucket, a big blocky head squeezes out from behind Erin's legs, snuffling curiously. Danny's jaw drops, and Erin swears she could see literal stars in his eyes. "Is that a doggy?" Danny asks. "Yep," Erin replied, giving Ted's a quick pat on her big old noggin. "Wow," Danny exclaims, "he's so big." "That she is," Erin laughs, stepping aside a little so Ted's isn't squashed between her and the door. "Can I pet her?" Danny asks. Erin is beaming because a little kid who understands and follows dog etiquette is a godsend unto itself. "Sure you can, buddy," Erin says, lightly grabbing hold of Ted's collar so she won't try to jump or anything. Danny pets Ted's with a level of reverence not normally found in kids. He is utterly awestruck at the size of this big baby. All of a sudden, from down the driveway, there comes an awful shriek, startling everyone present. "What are you doing?" Lo and behold, it's Danny's mother, who up until this point had been standing at the end of the driveway playing on her phone without so much as a glance in our direction. Apparently, the fact that her son was spending so long on our doorstep was enough to pry her away from Candy Crush or whatever, because she had finally decided to look up. She must not have liked what she saw, as she was now bolting up the driveway with vengeance. Danny's mother, henceforth known as Deborah, grabs her son by the shoulder and yanks him backwards, nearly knocking the poor kid over. Ted's, being a guard dog, is naturally put off by having this thing come charging loudly towards her house and her people. She squares her muscly shoulders, settles her fist-sized paws firmly on the ground, draws herself up, and lets out a jowl-flapping woof. Now would probably be a good time to mention that Tedderton, the tank taxivator, has a very powerful bark. It's deep, resonating, and absolutely crap-your-pants terrifying if you aren't expecting it. When this dog barks, the earth beneath her trembles. Deborah shrieks in fear, darting back. Danny seems startled for a second, but then starts clapping his little toddler hands in obvious delight. Good kid. "What is that thing?" Deborah screeches, reeling away in a combination of terror and repulsion. A dog?" Aaron replies, not at all politely. I may have accidentally rubbed my take no crap, give no hoots attitude onto her. Oops. "What?" Deborah yells. "But it's huge! Dogs aren't supposed to be that big." "Good ones are," Aaron says blandly. She's always been of the Ronald Swanson opinion on dogs, as have I, though I have met plenty of little dogs that I've liked. "Why were you letting it near my son? Dogs that size shouldn't be anywhere near kids. You should know better," Deborah snaps. "It could have eaten him." In fairness, Ted's was probably twice the size of the kid, easily, but that was still obviously a stupid thing to say. "Nah, she's already had dinner tonight," Aaron replied. "She's not hungry." Deborah opens her mouth to retort, but then does a little double take, her expression twisting back into horror. "What is wrong with your face?" she exclaims. "It's okay, Mama," Danny pipes up before Aaron can say anything. "She's not really hurt. It's just Mac-up." Aaron says he mispronounced it. "Are you out of your mind? Why would you be answering the door for kids when you look like that?" Deborah demands, ignoring her son entirely. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe because it's Halloween?" Aaron drawls. "Now listen here, you." Deborah points a finger towards Aaron and goes to take a step forward when she is stopped by another earth-rattling bark from Ted's. The harpy yelps and darts back again. "Ow!" Deborah screams. "What is wrong with you? Can't you control that thing?" "Well, first off, she's a guard dog, and you came at me yelling, so of course she got antsy," Aaron replies. Deborah opens her mouth to argue, but Aaron doesn't give her the chance. And second off, she's still a puppy, so we're still working on some of these things. That's not a puppy," Deborah says, obviously shaken. "Don't lie to me. That's way too big to be a puppy." "Nope, puppy," Aaron says. "She's gonna get even bigger too." "It's going to get bigger?" All color has drained from Deborah's face. All color has also drained from Danny's face, but that's because it's very cold outside, and this poor kid has been stuck standing there while his mother yells at my sister. "Yup," Aaron replies, popping the P sound with an evil grin on her face. "Maybe another 50 pounds or so, if she takes after her dad." "Come on, Danny," Deborah says, suddenly in a huge hurry. "We're leaving." She seizes Danny's arm and begins to walk quickly away. "Bye, miss. Bye, big doggy," Danny says, waving his little toddler hand happily at the two of them, seeming completely unfazed by his mother's behavior. "Bye," Aaron said, waving back. "Happy Halloween." She then closed the door, because again it was cold, and watched them leave. When Deborah glanced back over her shoulder, Aaron grinned ominously at her and waved, nearly bursting into hysterics at the speed with which this woman whipped her head back around at the sight. Aaron says she hopes Danny turns out all right, and that she kinda hopes she runs into Deborah again, if only so that she can terrorize her with our giant kid-eating dog a little more. Ted's was given many a treat that night. Next we've got Entitled Mom Rampages, Ruins Our Evening, and Gets Me and My Family Thrown Off of a Train. This happened over the weekend, and I'm still reeling from how this whole thing turned out. Every year, I take a weekend off to go spend with my dad on the weekend of his and my late mother's anniversary. We always go on a wine train that they would go to every year on their anniversary. It's usually a very emotional time whenever we go, since my dad has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and he doesn't want to forget, but is starting to have real trouble remembering things. Coincidentally, my mother-in-law was going to be having a little get-together for her birthday party on the same day we were going. My relationship with my mother-in-law, whom from this point will be designated as entitled mom, can be described as rocky at the best of times and downright hostile at the worst. She's kind of an ultra hippie type and loves to talk about her views and politics every chance she gets and loves to argue. So I'm constantly walking on eggshells around her. Her main reason for not liking me is because of the company I work for. When I let her and my fiance know that I wouldn't be able to attend her party, entitled mom has the brilliant idea to simply invite herself to this mostly private day with me and my dad. My fiance thinks it's a brilliant idea and will allow us to mend fences, but I already had a feeling that this was going to end horribly since my entitled mom does not handle alcohol well. Coming the day of the event, and my entitled mom comes up with her husband, and I can tell that she's been pre-gaming before she got there. My father-in-law looks noticeably uncomfortable, and entitled mom is being that overly friendly kind of drunk. I introduce them to my dad, and as we're in line to get tickets, I can see entitled mom taking sips from a water bottle that we later found out had wine in it. We finally board the train, and the trip was as much of a nightmare as it could have been. Entitled mom is loud and belligerent the entire night and is making everyone around her uncomfortable. She's complaining about the food being too fancy, accusing the staff and other passengers of being elitists when they won't engage with her, and being just an overall nuisance, despite her husband and my fiance's attempts to calm her down. When she wasn't drinking from the wine on the menu, she was taking sips from her water bottle. When the staff discovered that, they tried to tell her that she couldn't do that, which started a heated argument between her and the staff about how it was her birthday, so she could do what she wanted. I took the water bottle from her and told her to knock it off, but that only caused her to focus her rampage on me. She starts screaming at me, and she tells me that she doesn't know how I can live with myself, how I should feel ashamed of my job. When my dad tries to step in, she yells at him and tells him to shut up because he won't remember anyways. To make a long story short, the manager comes over and has us all escorted off the train. Everyone was varying levels of upset, with entitled mom literally crying about how her night was ruined. Eventually, we ended up catching Uber back to our vehicles. It's been a few days since then, and neither my dad, my fiance, or me have received an apology from her, and I've told my fiance that I don't want that woman anywhere near our wedding. My fiance has spent the past few days falling over herself, apologizing to me and my dad, and trying to make it up to us. My fiance called entitled mom yesterday to find out what's going on with her, but she didn't pick up her cell. Father-in-law picked up their house phone and apologized for what happened, but his tone was very Blaze, like, "Oh yeah, stuff like that happens" kind of tone. He said she did remember what happened, but wouldn't elaborate further. So if I had to guess, she's just going to pretend like nothing happened. Next we've got, customer harasses me, low-key stalks me, and is in general the worst. Background. I worked in a small-town electronics/appliance store when I was in high school, 2015. I was only a temporary Christmas worker, so I wasn't till trained. My job was to help with incoming stock, stock shelves, keep the store tidy, and help customers to the best of my ability, and then hand them off to the full-timers to complete the sale. I'm quite tech inclined and could usually help out with what customers are asking, but if it got out of my depth, I'd ask one of the full-time staff to assist. Okay, onto the story. We've got me. We've got Annie, full-time coworker. We've got Dad, main harasser, not my dad. We've got Mom, his wife. We've got Girl, their daughter, and Boy, their son. So I was stocking shelves one day when it was pretty quiet and his family came in. Dad immediately beelines for me and tells me they need a tablet. Okay, no worries. We have a tablet station set up with all of the Android tablets and then a separate display for the iPads because Apples like to be different. Kid goes off to play on iPads. Dad wanders off and I ask Mom what they need the tablet for, etc. She says it's for girls' schoolwork. She says very shyly that she wants the cheapest tablet. Important for later. Sweet. I show her the cheapest one and it fits all of her requirements. Okay, time to go out the back and get a boxed one. Dad comes back over and immediately starts asking why we went for that one. I try to explain that it's our cheapest option and he starts grilling me on what the difference is between that one and a Samsung one. Well, the price, for a start. Samsung was a solid $400 more. He gets super in-depth, grilling me about specifics of the tablets. I'm not an expert on Android. I'm better with Apple. So I say, I'm not sure, but let me grab someone who will know, and signal to Annie, who is at the counter. She comes over. Dad explodes. No, you need to finish doing your job. To Annie. Nope, go away. She hasn't finished her job. This goes on for a few minutes while I try to get a word in. Annie, who has heard everything, says, actually, she's a trainee. Her job is to help as much as she can and then get one of us. She's done her job. Dad gets in a huff, but finally shuts up. Annie and Mom decide on the cheaper tablet. Annie goes out back to get the boxed one. Dad goes to get the kids from iPads and asks me, "What are these?" I tell him they're iPads. "Why didn't you show us these?" Because Mom asked to see the cheapest option, and these start at around $500. Dad looks mad and says, "I want one of these." Mom and I are dumbfounded. Dad is insistent, and so Annie and I get them sorted on which one / storage size, etc. They end up spending $500 more than planned. Mom is not happy, but I get the vibe she doesn't want to stand up to Dad. They head to the counter to buy, and Annie asks how much they'd like to pay. Dad puts a lottery ticket on the counter. Not a winning one, just trash he had in his pocket. Cracks up like it's the funniest joke, howling with laughter. Annie and I are not having it. Annie asks again, and Mom reluctantly hands over credit card. They pay and finally leave. Wow, nightmare over. Just kidding. They come in the next day. They don't know how to set up the iPad. Our store offered tech solution / help with tech, etc. But usually it's a paid service through a separate part of the company where someone books and then a solutions employee will come to the store. We don't usually sit there and help out ourselves because we aren't trained for it and we don't get paid for it, unless it's a quick fix or you're extra nice. Family comes in, sits at our finance desk, asks for help setting up iPad. I'm not there yet. I didn't start until 11 that day, but Dad insists they only want me to help them, so they hang around. As soon as I walk in, we entered through front doors and walked to the back room through the store. He grabs me and tries to pull me over to them. I haven't even clocked in or put my stuff away. I'm trying to tell him this, but he's breaking out the "you need to do your job" spiel again. Never mind that setting up your iPad isn't actually my job. It took another employee intervening before he would let me go upstairs. I clocked in, etc., and reluctantly head back out. They're still waiting for me. Luckily, I actually know a lot about Apple, so it's not a huge task for me to set up an iPad, though the fact that they didn't have an email address — who the heck doesn't have an email address? — didn't help. Took me 3 hours in the end because Mom didn't understand a lot of it. Dad left and came back with food, tried to give me a donut. I declined, not to be rude, but mostly because I had already eaten and it seemed wrong to take food from a customer / stranger. He kept trying to shove it in my face and then eventually decided to eat it himself. I was very stoked when I finally saw the home screen of the iPad and I could send them the heck home. I won't keep going on here because this is super long already, but they came in a few more times, bought another tablet that was super expensive. What the heck? And then there was another time that he accosted me outside the store demanding I sell him a phone, and then had a massive argument with me when I tried to sell him said phone. Next we've got, guy steals $400 of gas, but I get the last laugh. Mobile blah blah. Backstory. I used to work at a marina when I was in high school that sold gas and allowed people to dock for free if they wanted to. Now, one day a guy comes in on a pretty big boat, comes in and gets a lot of gas, like $400 worth of gas. He comes to the counter to pay and gives me $400 and $100 bills, and I accept them and he goes on his merry way. Fast forward a week or so, and I am told by my boss that the bills he paid in were all counterfeit bills. Unfortunately, as he paid in cash, we had no way of tracking him down, so we think that he just got away with stealing $400 worth of gas. That is, until this idiot comes back after about a month and a half, thinking he got away with stealing the gas. When he comes back in, I recognize the guy and tell my coworker to call the police right away. However, I know that this guy would just leave if I let on that I had recognized him and we had discovered his plot to get free gas, so I decide to pretend I don't recognize him. Luckily for me, this guy asks to dock the boat for an hour or so on our dock, and I tell him it's not a problem. Now, it is policy to get the name and phone number of customers using free dockage, as well as asking that they leave their keys in the boat so that we can move the boat to a different dock if needed. He complies to all of the rules and leaves his boat, and he leaves his keys with me. After probably about 15 minutes of waiting, the police show up on the dock and ask my boss where the guy is. My boss tells them he just left his boat, but we have his number and can get him to come back to the boat, and he then instructs me to do just that. At this point, I was upset at this dude for making me look dumb for basically losing $400. So I call and tell him, "Hey, this is me from Marina. It seems as though there is an issue with your engine and it seems to be smoking." For those that don't know boats that well, engines are very expensive, and this one in particular was a 350 horsepower Yamaha engine, which is top of the line, so that man got back to that boat in a record time. When he got back to the boat, the look on his face when he saw two cops waiting for him was priceless. He tried to play it off and act like he had done nothing wrong and he didn't know why the police were there. But that was short-lived, as they arrested him and told him why he was being arrested. Turns out the guy had almost $2,000 in counterfeit $100 bills on him. Next we've got, don't litter, folks. You might find yourself at the receiving end of my devious father. This was many years ago, when I was around 23 years ago. My house was on a lower class side of town, mostly of more poor folks and retirees who had lived there before it went downhill. Our backyard butted right up against an alleyway that was a constant source of problems. As an example, we had a 15-foot diameter trampoline stolen from our backyard. This thing had been rusted together, so I can only figure they popped it up on its side and rolled it away like a big tire. Anyways, back to the story. The house across the alley from us was a duplex kind of a thing, and the landlord would rent to literally anyone. One guy he rented to was a fairly prolific criminal who ran his gig literally out of his kitchen window. Cars would pull up through the alley into the yard/parking, hands would move back and forth, and the car would drive away. This guy legit had a drug drive-through. It didn't take long for my parents to find all kinds of undesirable trash migrating its way into our yard. Needles, burned spoons, broken pipes, and who knows what else. My parents were worried about my dumb 5-year-old self getting into something or hurting myself with something that could decidedly harm me. My mother was a nurse before being disabled in a severe car accident and had been infected with hepatitis C while working at the hospital due to a needle that had been missed, so she was super worried about this for me as well as a handful of other kids in the neighborhood. Conversations with the landlord, including gathered evidence, made no difference. He didn't live there. Why did he care? Eventually, my parents tried to call the cops. The local PD was not helpful. They said they couldn't investigate or even send out a car on someone's word. This wasn't our first problem with the local cops either, after having our cars and other things broken into or stolen. They told my parents to write down license plate numbers, and if any matches a known felon or someone with a warrant, they would investigate. So my mother sat at the window for a full day and wrote down every plate she could see, hiding carefully the whole time. She ended the day with over 100 plates. That's how busy this guy was. We faxed, remember, 90s, the numbers along with a letter explaining what the numbers were for and who we had spoken with to the PD. Nothing happened. After several weeks, they called back and were told there were no matches of any kind. After another week of the problem simply getting worse, my father decided to take matters into his own hands. One night, with no moon, he sneaks into the driveway and throws roofing nails he had bought the previous day all into their area, hundreds of them. We watched for weeks as seemingly every tweaker in town would stop and almost immediately have to fix flats. Evidently, either business dwindled so much or the renter figured out someone was messing with them. Both, that they finally moved. The landlord spent over 2 weeks of having cleaning crews and the like over, throwing out huge mounds of garbage and repair crews to fix damage that I later found out was caused by the renter. It seems they trashed and stripped the place before disappearing some night without us noticing. The moral here? Not really one exactly, except for maybe the landlord. Be more selective who you let live in your house, maybe? Edit. I should clarify, the driveway was dirt, gravel, and tufts of grass, so these nails were not obvious and difficult to see, let alone pick up. My father specifically bought brown-colored ones. And shout-outs to our re-generals of the day. Corshed, Subaki of Melancholy, W. Blaine Jeep, Sidonia, and Pato Tato. Become tomorrow's Read Generals by leaving as many reads as you can in the comments below.